Very good, thank you. Ace, what's the call?
It's already cute. I'll introduce myself.
She's gonna clean up these donut holes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I already got it.
Good, that's good, that's good.
I do have.
Yeah.
It's not, it was before the.
It's coming. Here's another one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this May 18th, 2022 meeting of the City of Charleston Planning Commission. My name is Charlie Karras. I'm the chairman of the commission. I'm joined by Vice Chairman Mr. Harry Lassane, commission members Mr. Jimmy Bailey, Ms. Donna Jacobs, Ms. Laquita Bryant Jenkins, and Ms. McKenna Joyce. We have a quorum, so we'll get moving. I'll go through the guidelines. First of all, let me welcome Council Member Peter Shahid, who's here. Whenever we have a council member, we always like to give him the proper credit and thank him for his work as well. But so you know, the commission members are volunteers appointed by Charleston City Council, and I know you join me in thanking them for their work. The way the meeting will run is I'll read an item into the record, and then we'll hear from staff. Staff will give an opinion, describe the item, give us an opinion, then we'll hear from the applicant. Then we'll hear from anyone that's agreeing with the application and anyone opposed to the application. Then we'll give the applicant an opportunity to respond to any concerns. After that, we'll close the public aspect of the meeting, and commission members will discuss, ask questions, and vote on. If you have cell phones, I'd ask you to put them on silent or mute, and I appreciate her turning them off. I'm asked Mr. Morgan to introduce, Christopher Morgan to introduce any staff members that will be participating tonight.
Sorry, we've got a little technical glitch here. We're trying to get our slides back because these do list all our folks, but I'll kind of read them all for everybody. I'm Christopher Morgan, planning manager at the city. Tonight, you'll be hearing from Robert Summerfield, our overall department director, also Anna Hart in the zoning division, Lee Batchelder, our zoning administrator. Jim Hemphill is right next to me fixing our little technical issue. And Jim is our key staff liaison for the planning commission. Also helping the meeting running tonight are Philip Overcash, Chloe Stuber, Eric Coleman will be commenting on an issue, and Molly Jones is our annexation coordinator, and she is here as well.
Thank you, sir. The first thing we're going to do is, and we met with the pandemic, we met via Zoom for some time. And many of you hadn't had the opportunity, many commission members haven't had the opportunity to meet our director of the planning department, Robert Summerfield. So I asked Robert to come. We asked Robert to come, introduce himself formally to us, tell us about himself and any few goals he has or things that he wants our help on. And I know he's from Las Vegas. That's all I know. He moved here from Vegas.
Moved here from Vegas. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, for inviting me to come and just talk a little bit about what we've been working on as a planning department and some of the stuff we're going to be working on over the rest of the year and going forward. So real quick by introduction, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, I most recently come from Las Vegas, Nevada. I've actually now been here for about 15 months now. It seems like the time has just flown by. And prior to that, I was in Ohio, was born in Akron, Ohio, went to school in Columbus at Ohio State. However, actually in middle school, I went to middle school at C.E. Williams for 8th grade because my family had moved here. My father worked for a company that was replacing floors that had been damaged during Hurricane Evo. So actually went to middle school here in Charleston, and then the family moved up outside of Columbia and went to starting my high school up outside of Elgin in the Columbia area. So I do have some connection and roots prior to this latest move. That's kind of me and the history there. As far as the planning department, so as you know, you all are staffed by an amazing team. You just heard Mr. Morgan introduce pretty much his entire division, the planning division, which supports this body, in addition to some folks from our zoning team. One of the questions that you wanted me, or you had asked that I speak on, was just, what are we doing? And so one of the things, and you give great shout out to the council and Councilman Shaheen that's here this evening, but they stepped up this past year in the budgeting process. And so there's a couple of things I want to talk about that were authorized under this last year's budget and that we've been working towards. One of the big ones is staffing. And so, Christopher mentioned Molly. Molly is our new annexation planner. One of the things that we put in our budget request, one of the things that got support from community members, but especially from council, is providing additional staff resources to the planning department and to the community. And one of those positions that we were very eager to get filled was the annexation planner position. This is not annexations as people have thought about them in the past, big annexations of huge tracts of undeveloped land. This is not that effort. This is really to address these areas where we have these donut hole or seesaw kind of jurisdictional lines within areas of West Ashley, Johns and James Island areas, but even over on King Point, where there are some of those kind of little pockets or little donut holes, as we call them, areas where we think that there's a real advantage for folks to come into the city, not only for them individually for their property, but also for just delivering community services. Some of these mixed jurisdictional lines with one trash can being from this jurisdiction and the next one, it creates a lot of confusion in the community. And so we think that that will be a real asset for helping to address some of those issues. Additionally, Chloe Stuber, who's on this team, one of our priorities was to get some higher level responsibility within the planning team. And so we were successful in upgrading her position and promoting her. So in case you don't know, Chloe just earlier this year was promoted to a senior planner within our planning division because of the workload that we have going forward and the work that she has been doing within the division. So we're very excited about that. In addition, the department had gotten funding for a few other positions. We're working on those. Sadly, the market has created a real difficulty in getting our preservation areas staffed up. We're diligently working on that. So those are some of the staffing things we've been working on. And again, we were very blessed in the budgeting process to get a couple positions approved as a part of the budget and then get some that upgrade. The other big thing we're working on, though, are two big projects. So, of course, and this commission was intimately involved in the passage of the city plan, all the work that the team and the consultant group did in bringing that to fruition. But now we're in the process of implementing that plan. So no plan, no matter how great it is, really means anything if you're not implementing the plan. And so this year, we are working on, amongst a plethora of things, two big projects that are going to be going out for RFP here within the next, hopefully the next couple of weeks, maybe as long as a month. The first one is the Peninsula Plan. So one of the big action items that came out of the city plan is to update and hard look at where the direction of areas of the city are going. And one of those was the Peninsula. The downtown plan had not been updated since 1999. And so, as you all know, with what you see coming before this board, significant activity has occurred in this downtown area and on the peninsula since that plan was adopted. So we have an RFP that the team has been working on. We will be actually going out to solicit proposals on that here within the next 30 days to do a new peninsula plan, because downtown is bigger and more than what it had been in 1999, the last time they did it. So that's going to be a big effort, and it's going to be addressing a number of elements in that planning process that were addressed in the city plan in a more nuanced and specific fashion for the peninsula. The other big project that we're working on is a complete rewrite of the zoning code. So the zoning code for the city of Charleston is pretty large. It has been edited, modified. You have a couple amendments that are on your agenda either tonight or in the next couple of meetings. We've done a lot of changes for a lot of very specific and good reasons. However, we've not looked comprehensively at the zoning code in 40 years, I think it is, somewhere along those lines. I believe I was told. So one of the big projects that we're doing, and again, this is another place where council stepped up and allocated the first half of that funding in the amount of $500,000, because that is a big project. We will be getting the RFP out to bring on some consultant services to update that. But it goes further than just doing a comprehensive rewrite. The zoning code update will focus on those objectives that were endorsed and adopted by the Planning Commission and the City Council in the city plan by looking at our development regulations and our development schemes in a way that takes in elevation and takes in that land use and water analysis that was done and that was such an important element of the city plan, and makes changes to our development standards that are appropriate so that we're developing in the next 10, 20, 30 years in the right places to the right degree, that we're protecting today's citizens and tomorrow's citizens and their investment in those properties and in those communities and neighborhoods. So those are the two big projects we're working on. We're of course continuing to work on a whole bunch of other things. Affordable housing continues to, as you all imagine, a huge thing that our team is working very diligently on. At a certain point, we're hoping when we get the RFP out for the new zoning code effort, we can slow down or maybe completely pause on non-essential text amendment changes to the zoning code so that we're not amending the code at the same time we're trying to rewrite it. However, we do have a few things that we have in the works right now that we kind of need to address. So you'll see a few more text amendments coming your way, but then hopefully we'll have an opportunity to pause some of those. So with that, I know you have a number of things on your agenda. You have a pretty decent crowd for this evening's public hearings. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there's anything any of you need, you should not hesitate to send me an email. If you don't have my contact information, let Christopher know, and we'll make sure to get that out to everybody.
Thank you. Commission members, questions? I know there may be a lot of questions that we may bring you back for, but there's some things I know this commission is very focused, like city council is, on affordable housing and some of the initiatives we'd like to discuss with that. But commission members, any questions or comments?
Don't be a stranger, come back. 15 months is a long time.
Absolutely. Now that we're back in person, I think to be fair and clear, I have lurked in your meetings in the Zoom audience and on YouTube. So I have been paying attention to a lot of the discussions y'all have been having on items. But now that we're back to in-person stuff, and y'all are just right downstairs, I do look forward to coming down and
Look forward to having you. Good to put a face with the name.
absolutely.
Ms. Jacobs?
You said 30 days, maybe to get the RFP out. What's the timeline for both of these? Do you have any sense of that for us and how you?
Absolutely. So both plans will be have regular check-ins with this body so that progress is being identified there. There will be an opportunity, I believe, in both cases for us to possibly ask for some participation on some of our advisory groups that we'll be establishing for both of those projects to have at least one member of our planning commission, if not two, participate in a formal capacity. Then, of course, we always invite everybody in the community to participate in any of our charrettes public processes and things like that. The Peninsula Plan, we're hoping that that is a 12 to 18 month process from the time that we negotiate and award that contract. Ideally, it would be closer to the 12 months, but we also know that there's a lot of stuff going on. So we're being a little bit cautious in saying about 18 months. With the zoning code rewrite, that is a significant undertaking. We do anticipate that that's going to be a 2-year process. In part, it has to be a 2-year process because we only received half of what we believe the necessary funding to be through this budget cycle. And so I'll be, as part of next year's budget request for the department, I'll be asking for additional funding for the second half, if you would, of that project. So we anticipate that the drafting process for that will take 2 years. And then we would expect that there'll be another 3, 6, 9 months of the public process to have the formal hearings at Planning Commission and recommendations to City Council for the adoption of a new zoning ordinance. So we'll be working on that. One of the interim things that we are looking at, because there was such work done by the community, by this board, related to that elevation component, we may be looking at some temporary measures to help address that in the interim between now and when we will have a formal rewrite of the zoning code. We're kind of working on that right now. So that might be one of the text amendments that you may see coming forward in the course of the next few months, would be something that provides kind of some guidance toward where the new code will be and helps us, particularly in those low-lying areas where we don't want to, over this 2-year period of all this work, to still see maybe development that's not appropriate at certain scales and intensities in those low-lying areas.
Sure. Appreciate your coming. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and we'll talk to you. And thank you. Have a good evening too.
Thanks, y'all.
The first item that we're going to discuss is minutes. We sent out, there was a lot of minutes were sent out. Some of them were old that we had never approved, so we needed formally to approve them.
You would have to second, March 16th, 2022.
Will not be approved. Not
Say it one more
that.
time.
March 16th, 2022.
Not included in what we've seen. Okay. So discussion or motion regarding the minutes that were emailed out to commission members. Ms. Jacobs.
I did my best job and I sent what I saw. It wasn't much to Mr. Popper. There was one thing where I asked him to look at the to hear the recording and see if
We'll have to go back through that and everything, but I'll make sure to get that done before.
I had notes different about who voted and who's recording. the
Most of
minutes.
these were years ago, 2 years
Yeah.
ago, so we didn't have the paper documents anymore. So
A particular item where I think
if you have something different where you wrote it down, I'm going to include that because I was just going off their recording.
I have a motion, I have it written down.
Jacobs, you have a motion on this, or you'd like to?
So I can move to approve all but December 18th and July 19th. I did not attend those meetings.
December the 19th.
July the 19th, I was doing attendance on the 18th. 2018, I was not in attendance at that meeting, and I would like that 1 minute record to go to, but I can move to approve the rest of the other actions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Move and approve other than the December the 19th, 2018.
And July 17th, 2000.
Since December the 19th here.
It's December the 19th.
Yeah, and July the 17th, 2019. So there's a motion to approve all the minutes other than December the 19th, 2018 and July 17th, 2019. Is there a second to the motion?
Mr. Chair, I wasn't present for a number of those meetings
Okay.
as well.
Yes,
Just
ma'am.
wanted to be noted on the record.
Yes, ma'am.
But
Thank
the
you.
ones that where I was, yes.
Okay.
And I'll have to abstain on July 17th, 2019, June 19th, 2019, through December 19th, 2018, because my first appearance would have been in August of
I got you.
2019.
So can I get a second to Ms. Jacobs' motion?
I will second.
Great. Motion by Ms. Jacobs. And that's when you approve old, and they tell me the minutes are draft, you can always change them and reapprove them and things like that. So second to Mr. Lassane, all in favor of approving all the minutes except December 19th, 2018 and July 19th, 2019, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, can I get a motion regarding December 19th, 2018 and July 17th, 2018? So I'm gonna probably have to ask.
Mayor, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to defer these two.
Okay.
I have not had a chance to look at them in as much detail as I would like to.
And we are missing, and maybe that's a good idea because we're missing two members who were here, Ms. Johnson and Ms. Lampus, so they're neither here tonight. So we would have some more input from them on those. So there's a motion to defer. Second by Mr. Bailey. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. So we'll defer those two. Thank you, Mr. Hussein. Good idea. First item on the agenda is rezoning from 1332 Ashley River Road and adjacent parcel Old Town Acres, West Ashley, TMS number 418-02-00107 and 155, approximately 1.4 acres. Request rezoning from single family SR1 to general office GO. Mr. Morgan.
Here, let me just check something. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, this is a property in West Ashley, Ashley River Road, obviously the Ashley River Road address. It's in an area that is almost exclusively commercially zoned along Ashley River Road. As you can see from this image that the properties GB are in the kind of pinkish reddish color. The lighter color is the RO properties as well as the general office properties, so residential office, general office, limited business. And then these crosshatch properties are in the county overlay, which essentially gives those all commercial designations as well. So this is a kind of isolated remaining residential property or residentially zoned property along Ashley River Road. The comprehensive plan that was recently adopted designated this property, the main larger parcel here, as our neighborhood edge, which is an area that would essentially allow for commercial type uses, limited commercial type uses, or residential uses. There is a smaller parcel that is associated with the parcel that is up for rezoning as well, that doesn't actually have frontage on any street. That ended up in the plan as the same designation as the surrounding residential area, suburban edge. But as part of this overall rezoning, we're kind of taking these two together. Have an image here that kind of gives the background of what neighborhood edge means. That they're on the periphery of an existing neighborhood, and they are things that residents need, such as offices, stores, and restaurants that are typically found along routes and transit routes, forming the edges of the neighborhood rather than in the center of the neighborhood. So in other words, they're things that, you know, you don't want all the traffic going through the middle of the neighborhood for. You want it more on the edge of the neighborhood along the major route. And they're allowed for 6 to 20 units per acre. And then the bulk of the neighborhood is the suburban edge, which is 1 dwelling unit to 4 dwelling units an acre. It's just a very standard kind of suburban setup there. Aerial images show that there is a structure on the property as well as some very significant trees here. And the adjoining property also has some significant trees, and you can see some of the nearby offices and structures that are along Ashley Road. We'll show an upfront view of the property, again, some substantial trees, and there's the existing residential structure that's on the property. Here is a adjoining property to the east. So very much an office type use, or it's a salon in this instance, which is allowed in the office designations. Then we have the corner here with Winston Street, and you see some of the trees that are on the site, and then the residential street off to the side. And then this is an adjoining property. This is just a little bit further down. We were just at this corner here. Now we're here at a property that was previously residential and is now office type use. And the zoning comparison table of what it is at present on the left, which is SR1, and then the requested category of general office to the right. Which GO allows for offices such as medical insurance, real estate, attorney's office, engineering, and financial services. Our staff recommendation on this, because of what's in the comprehensive plan, is for approval. We did want to point out that there is a key emphasis in our plans for historic preservation and also keeping the kind of character of an individual area. And so we thought that the commission should remember that, because there is a structure on the site that it is very much from the history of Ashley River Road. And I know that there are some concerns about that structure. Also, Eric Pullman is with us tonight, who is our West Ashley coordinator, of course, and he's very familiar with Plan West Ashley. Eric, if you want to say anything in reference to Plan West Ashley on this property.
Sure. So thank you, Christopher. So Plan West Ashley, when it comes to this property, it's very similar to what you're seeing from the city plan, which is Plan West Ashley would actually recommend for the use being at this location, because it's going to be pulling in office and or I believe right now it's proposed to be a daycare closer into the neighborhood, and to allow better services closer into neighborhoods to allow people to walk, bike, etc. With that being said, Plan West Ashley also recognizes that there's a need to preserve the character and the history within West Ashley. So that would pertain more to, like Christopher said, the structure on the site. But the plan would actually support the zoning category of general office.
Anything else, Mr. Moore?
That's all we have.
Great. Is the applicant here tonight?
Yes, sir.
If you would, and I should have said this again, if you come up to speak, please tell us who you are. If you represent someone, let us know and tell us your address. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
My name is Andy Bajowski. I'm the civil consulting engineer for the owners on this project. I have a little bit of an addition to what was in the packet. It's kind of just a little expanded view of the surrounding zonings. So it actually got stapled in reverse, so we can switch to the second page first. I just want to revisit the surrounding zonings here within the same block that this parcel is located. It's all geo zoning. And then as you expand further out from that, there's some additional limited business as was noted. The nearest residential uses that front Ashley River Road are the apartment complex to the west at Ashley Hall. And then not until you get to Maryville to the east, there's some residential properties that front Ashley River. So just wanted to expand the view here and see that everything fronting Ashley River Road in this area is a commercial zoning, and this property is currently an outlier of that. Christopher already kind of covered that on the first page, but this was just a supplement for the county parcels that are sprinkled in here to demonstrate that those also are commercial type zonings across the street. So the proposed use for this project is a daycare center. We've gone through some preliminary planning stages of this project, feasibility. We've hosted 2 community meetings. One the owners hosted, and then we attended the councilman's meeting last Saturday. So we have gathered some community input so far at both of those meetings, and are looking at revisiting our site planning to date to see how we can incorporate all of those comments that we had received. So that's just a brief overview, an introduction from us, and a little bit of expanded information from the packet.
So just a quick question. So it's not before us today, but curiosity, if you're planning a daycare, your plan is to go for demolition of that property?
So initially, yes, sir. The plan was for demolition. I know that's going to be an issue. We've heard that's been before DRB before. So right now we're looking at revisiting the site plan to see if there's any way we can make it work with the existing structure.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of the application? Yes, you'll come on up and tell us who you are and speak into the microphone.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hutto. I own the property adjoining Piccolo Hair Salon. I've been in business for 27 years. I've passed this property for the better half of 20 years that it's sat the way it looks. It's worse than it's ever been. I called the livability board. right after the pandemic allowed us to reopen, because the owners are not in state. So they've been very cordial about trying to do something about what they could, but it's an eyesore. I have a business right next door. I did not get an email or any information about your meeting, Councilor Shiggs. So that makes me wonder what my representation is in that area. I've had lots of comments from my current clients. What are they doing? What is going to happen? And I have heard about the not to tear down, because I had thought about even purchasing it myself just to get it cleaned up. The place brings on vagrants. We've had squatters. We've had to call the police. My clients are seeing this. It's just, it can't go on like this. I don't live there, but my business is there, and I have a 27-year-old business. So there, and I've been there 5 years. I bought the property in 2016. The awesomeness of what this couple is trying to do is what our little town in West Ashley needs. I have 12 employees. I have 3 young women who are going to have families. They are looking desperately for daycare. It's not to be found. There's a waiting list. They're not even taking kids. So what do? We have to flex with this thing. And I know that people that may be here that are living in this neighborhood are worried about some things, but we have a brewery that's going to be across the street. I mean, this is our future. This is our children's children. So what are we going to do? Just let this place? It's a beautiful piece of property, but they have not kept it up. There is a hole from my viewpoint, from where I stand in my back property, that the roof is caved in. I mean, I've been in this house. It has black mold. It is a wreck. It would not be where I would want to put my child. They need the permission to tear this thing down. It is not fit. It would not be up to code. It's a wreck. Property is a wreck, and the trees are a wreck. They're all hollow. I've had to do thousands of dollars worth of work along the fence line that we share. So I have a vested interest in this.
So if you speak to us, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I feel passionately about it.
No, I know you do. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Anyone else in favor of the application? Yes, sir. Speak up. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Siddhartha Chowdhury. I'm a resident of West Ashley at 709 Parish Road. We were introduced to the couple that is going to, or have been planning for this school about 6 years ago. And we quickly bonded over our passion for education. I myself have worked for the State Charter School District, and now I'm currently a teacher at Burke High School. So whenever we meet as families, we're talking about the educational needs of our children. And when Tommy and Anish talked to me about the idea of starting a preschool / daycare for the residents of Charleston, I was like, this is so needed. The kids that are coming into school desperately need good early education. And Tommy has been working in early education for most of her career. So she knows what works, what doesn't work, is working with national partners to try to make sure that our community has a really high quality education facility for our youngest kids. And so that when they enter kindergarten a few years down the road, they will be ready. I, as I said, live in West Ashley, moved there 6 years ago, and moved there with a 4-year-old and know what it was like to scramble to find a place to have put our kid while my wife works. And so we are so excited that it would, for the neighbors that are coming into our neighborhood with smaller kids that may have an opportunity to have their kids be educated in a place that is set up by Tanvi and Anish. One other thing, not only has Crumbly been working in early education for many years, Anish is an architect that has been working with many schools across the state. So he understands what it takes to design and plan for schools, and in a way that is sensitive to the needs of the larger community. So those are things that we have been thinking about, we talk about, and I'm like super excited to see the day that their school opens and those kids walk through that door.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for teaching the children too. Thank you. Anyone else in favor of the application? If not, anyone opposed to the application? You'll come up one at a time. Thank you. And tell us who you are and where you live.
My name is John Ackerman. I live at 1252 Bamboo Drive in the neighborhood, and appreciate the opportunity to present our opposition. In a sentence, I wanted to say this is an upzoning by a for-profit national chain that would significantly change the fabric of this Charleston neighborhood. This is my first time at a zoning hearing, my first time involved with anything relating to zoning. Got to read the City of Charleston ordinances for the first time this past weekend. There's a theme in there that I noticed several times throughout the handouts that you see here. I want to read these for the benefit of the audience as well. The city places a high value on the preservation of the character of its residential neighborhoods. Potential negative impacts affecting residential neighborhoods should be minimized to the greatest extent possible. I believe that this could significantly change the character of this residential neighborhood, allowing this upzoning, and have negative impacts where it says it shall affect this neighborhood. Looking at the handouts, the second one shows this map, and I don't want to focus on the fact that this is a commercial corridor, but focus that there's just as much frontage on a residential street. And if you look at it as Winston Street, it's a residence. It's currently zoned as a residence, and we are against the zoning that it is being moved up to. SR1 to general office. General office, as we read, incorporates professional, administrative, medical, insurance, attorney, engineering, which are all low impact, low intensity. Not 150 student daycare that we've heard it's going to go in. The third handout, you'll see pictures of the neighborhood. Our main concern is traffic coming through the neighborhood. More traffic will forever change this tight-knit neighborhood. We walk our dogs, we push strollers, we meet on these streets. This is a community because we get to meet, walk, and talk on these streets. We are a very tight-knit community. Some of our concerns that I put together for us, that the traffic would prevent us from being able to walk and create this community. The safety of our neighbors. I just imagine a daycare and someone zooming through the neighborhood, cutting through a shortcut to try and get their kids before the 6 o'clock, because you might get a $10 fine if you're there a little late to get your child, and really disturb the safety of our neighborhood. Emergency services, if the streets are clogged with traffic, that it would be difficult for many of the elderly that are in our neighborhood. We have folks that have been in there their whole lives. Tammy, Garrett have lived in this neighborhood their entire lives, and as they get older and need emergency services, that can't get through. Parking, we're worried about additional parking flooding onto the streets up and down Winston Street. Noise pollution, there's a piece in the piece that comes with that quiet. Litter, and then just simply being able to back out of your driveway. I found out about this issue on Friday afternoon. Sunday, I went and met with Jan, our neighborhood association president, who's here tonight, and they hadn't gone and spoken to her yet. which I thought was telling. But as a tight-knit community, we quickly gathered, and on Monday evening, had a meeting with more than 60 residents to talk about the issues, to talk about how we felt about it. And so I could gather some of these thoughts to put in a little more efficient, concise presentation for you here today. It is a tight-knit community that we were able to get together so many people so quickly to arrive on Monday night and to hear they oppose this upzone. These neighbors chose to live here, to live in the suburbs. They are financially and emotionally invested in this neighborhood. I'm sure that you're familiar with some of the issues in Blessed Sacrament and the Cooper School that are near the neighborhood and the traffic that they faced. And we're worried that the same issues will present themselves to us. On the fourth handout, you'll see where they intend to put a cut-in on Winston Street. We believe would be the main entrance and exit, and therefore neighbors or families would cut through the neighborhood. The fifth slide shows where we who know the neighborhood a little bit better think that they would zoom through, take shortcuts through. Maybe not the first day, maybe not the first week, but eventually learning how to cut through our neighborhood, bringing up these traffic and safety issues. The daycare that's going in is a national chain. They have locations across the country, including one in Mount Pleasant. It's easy to look them up. I did just today on Google Earth and saw and wanted to share with you some of their neighbors. They're on Highway 17 in Mount Pleasant in a busy traffic area and share an intersection with a gas station, 7-Eleven, Arrow Bread, Ace Hardware, and a Walmart. It's a busy, heavy commercial intersection. And for those of you I know who've been through this corridor in West Ashley, those are not the kind of businesses, that's not the kind of traffic, that's not the kind of high density use that this intersection is, that this neighborhood is. Finally, in the last of the handouts, we had a traffic study done recently. December 16th to the 21st, capturing data of the number of cars going through, showed that there were 2,200 vehicles that went through. Never want a lawyer to do math, but I did anyway. This was going to be a PowerPoint slide, so I could develop it a little more dramatically, but just bear with me. 22,052 cars divided by 6 days gives us 370 cars per day on average. It's still a little higher than most of the neighbors in our discussions thought come through our neighborhood, but nonetheless, can't argue with the numbers. This is discoverable information. The city put together this traffic study. So then I looked at it, 150 students, and I've been told it's somewhere between 140 and 160, but 150 students, let's just say, coming drop off and coming back to pick up. That's 300 cars coming through the neighborhood. Fortunately, an engineer in the neighborhood, Andy, said, don't let a lawyer do math. You got it all wrong, John. This is how you do it. That's 150 cars coming through the neighborhood to drop off, cutting through shortcuts to go back out to go to work. 150 cars coming back through to pick up their child and then zooming back out to go home and take their children home. That's 600 cars. That's more than double the current car rate coming through. Quoting the city of Charleston's own zoning words from the first handout, prevent this negative impact, preserve the safety, preserve the character of this neighborhood. Deny this zoning change. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Tell me your name once more.
John Ackerman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am, you come on up.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Jack Moore. I'm a resident of Old Town Acres. I live at 1227 Gilmore Road, Charleston. Our neighborhood was designed and built for residential housing. Our neighborhood was not designed to support and sustain this proposed daycare business. Had I or my parents, who have since passed away while living in our neighborhood, wanted to live in a business district, we would not have purchased homes in our neighborhood. Allowing and approving this business negates the very choices we have made for our lives and for our future. These are the things that will be negated and impacted, as was said by Mr. Ackerman. Peace and quiet, our right to peaceful enjoyment. The low traffic, a safe and protected community. If this business is allowed, it will negatively impact us for generations. Parking is already an issue because we don't have sidewalks. I walk my little Yorkie around the block. If there's one car behind us, it's a big issue. There are no sidewalks. We have to go up onto the grass. Imagine if there's an influx of cars, what will happen? There will be accidents in our future. But most importantly, it will impact our quality of life, our home values. I caregave to both of my parents in our neighborhood. My mother passed of brain cancer, my father of diabetes. Hospice visits our home. The ambulance visits our home when the elderly fall. We need our parking and we need that street access. As I'm reiterating, EMS and fire access is critical to our neighborhood. But worst of all, allowing this business will open Pandora's box. As you are all familiar from Greek mythology, this will set the precedent for other residential homes to be rezoned. Once Pandora's box is open, there is no closing it. However, unlike Pandora's box, that at least saved hope, there will be no hope to retain the intention and original purpose and character of our neighborhood. We must stop the floodgate from opening, and this daycare is absolutely the floodgate. My plea is not just about me, it's about generations to come. There is a place for this daycare to be honored and supported and sustained in a neighborhood with sidewalks and adequate parking. In a business district, not our neighborhood. And there's only one more thing I want to add. I am extremely passionate about education. I was a one-year Rotary Scholar to Greece, and I spent 1 year overseas serving at an orphanage for refugee children. I've also served in Turkey and Cyprus and in the States. There's nothing I'm more passionate about than children and supporting our families. But this is not the place to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your time. Yes, sir, come on up.
My name is Skip Gosnell, and I've been doing hearings for over 30 years. And this is the first time I've had the opportunity, and I hope the last time I ever have to be here. I live at 1233 Bamboo Drive. I moved there 12 years ago. I told my neighbors, who all met in my backyard 2 days ago, that when I moved into Old Town Acres in May, October, the Halloween came around, and I had 6 children show up at my door to get their Halloween candy. This past year, I had over 70 children come and get Halloween candy. That's a barometer of the neighborhood that we now live in. This neighborhood isn't going downhill, it's coming back up. So the caliber of this neighborhood, the investments that the young families are bringing in, is very dear to my heart. Winston, that the commission is looking at here, feeds into Bamboo. From Bamboo, it goes into Bryjo, Gilmore, and Marvin. This is the way out of the neighborhood to 171. That's what this map doesn't show. This map doesn't show what the traffic flow pattern is going to be. The other thing this map doesn't show is Ashley River Road. I know this. I live over there. Everybody on this end of the neighborhood has to pass through our neighborhood to get to 171 because they can't get out on Highway 61. It's a parking lot. Go out there right now. They can't get into this. And with what they're proposing at this point in time in this zoning, this is what's going to create a traffic pattern in a neighborhood that is growing as a neighborhood. I beg upon you to please hear our plea. Our plea is do not pass this zoning issue tonight. Our neighborhood is sacred to all of us. When in 24 hours, I can get over 70+ people to come into my backyard and listen to what the situation is. Everybody has a vested interest. And at the end of the day, if this happens and the property value on any of these streets go down, it will affect the property value of everybody in this area because of the comps. We beg upon you and plead. Please understand where we're at. We're building a neighborhood that's growing with children. We're building a neighborhood that people walk the streets every day. Every day. Come sit in my front yard. And if you don't see 30 families walking up and down our street after the hours of 3 o'clock to about 7 o'clock, well, I'll eat my words, and I'm not eating any of them. I know, I count it. I beg upon you, understand the quality of life of our neighborhood. That's what we're trying to save here tonight. And I beg upon you to hear our plea. Thank you, Mr. Parrish, and I do appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to speak? Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Thank you so much for your time, first of all. We're a long-winded group, but we're a good group. We're like a big family. My name is Laura Duke. I live at 1309 Brijo Place, which is the heart of Old Town Acres. So I can tell you exactly how many people walk by. We see them all. My children are currently, they are probably playing in front of my home with skateboards and balls, and any of the neighbors can tell you that they regularly have to slam on brakes because of a little 8-year-old boy who will errantly kick a soccer ball. The other interesting thing about my story is that my children are the 4th generation to live in my home. My grandparents built it when they got married, and I recently bought it. And my little boy says that one day he's going to raise his kids in it too. I want to be very clear that our neighborhood is not anti-education in any way. We support a preschool right outside of Lenavar. Many of us have walked our children there for years. It's the density of this particular proposal that concerns us. This is too many cars. I would not be able to allow my children to play out front with this kind of density that is being proposed. We understand that something has to happen with the property. Our concern over and over again is the density and the traffic flow and preserving the safety and the community that we have and that has been fostered so well. I just want to get a show of hands for the neighbors, my neighbors that live in our community. If y'all would all just raise your hands really quickly.
And out here, our neighbors. We have another 8 of us out here also.
We see you. Thank you.
Would any of you that live in Old Town Acres, Lenavar, or Heathwood that are in favor of this type of zoning, raise your hand? Anyone opposed? It's not, the zoning proposal does not suit the character and the safety of our neighborhood and our needs in any way. And I'm speaking as someone with young children. It just does not suit us. We would ask you to take another look at this proposal and think of a better way to fit a business model into our neighborhood. That a lawyer's office that's across the street, the Wigger Law Firm, is right here. They have maybe 3 to 5 cars a day. It's not a problem. We didn't complain about it then. We won't complain about it now. It is very low impact. They have success. They've found success there. it can support a business that's the right size for our neighborhood and for our area. And just thank you for your time, for listening to us, and really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming, ma'am. Thank you.
Help us out. Thank
Anyone
you.
else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Stephen Boyle. I live at 1215 Gilmore Road, and I live at the end of Bamboo, so all the traffic that's going to be coming down is going to be coming right down at the end of my street. And we have two stop signs there, two streets that come together, Bamboo and Gilmore. And those signs will be probably disregarded with this amount of traffic that's coming in. But more important is that this whole place on Winston Street here, if we believe that all these cars are gonna park here in this parking lot and not try to use Winston Street as their shortcut, and they're gonna drop their cars here, and they're gonna be parking their cars right on people's front lawns. Again, we don't have any sidewalks in Old Town Acres, and we walk it, as all these other folks and these young folks have said. I've lived there for 32 years, folks, right after Hurricane Hugo hit us on Folly Beach. And our neighborhood has been reborn with all these young families, and they walk this neighborhood. They walk it so heavy that when they walk it on a Friday afternoon and they finish, sometimes there'll be a crowd, and I will tell you, I've taken pictures of the flash mob because these young folks get out there 20 and 30 as a group with their children and their carriages, and with this traffic, that's going to completely shut that down.
Thank you very much, sir, for coming. Anyone else in opposition? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Mike Olson, and I'm at 1237 Gilmore. I am part of the administrative staff at Trinity Montessori School, which is also in West Ashley, 1293 Orange Road, just across from Orange Road Charter. A number of the families at Trinity Montessori, it's primarily preschool. A number of families have children that are at some of the neighboring elementary schools. And I happened to speak with one of the parents today whose daughter is at Trinity and whose son is at Cooper. And knowing about this meeting today, I asked the mom how they do pickup and drop off at Cooper. And she said, well, it's a nightmare. I have to cut into neighborhoods and snake around. And it was about as much as I expected, right? And what I imagined would be similar here. And now, to be honest, I do admissions at Trinity, so I am well aware of the crunch that Charleston has here for childcare. We have a wait list that is easily open 2 more Trinity Montessori's and fill them right away. It's crazy. And so we feel for the families of Charleston and for folks who do want to open, do the good work of opening up a preschool. The thing that concerns me isn't per se the traffic, although sure. The story continued that this parent was telling me today was that when they leave the Cooper school, there's a line of cars that generally parks in a certain place, and I wasn't familiar with the street name. But the street parking, which I assume are the residents or the people that go to the businesses surrounding Cooper, was made leaving the Cooper school difficult. And so several parents of children at the Cooper school petitioned to have that street parking taken away from that neighborhood. And they talked about it with pride, which, you know, I guess an achievement is an achievement, but I believe that as a resident of the neighborhood, we would become at odds with the parent community that were sending their children to this facility, and the collective power of the parents could have some at this time unforeseen negative consequence to the neighborhood, whether it's parking or whatever it is. I would just prefer not to become I would want to be on one side of an argument and be fighting the parents of the students at the school. That's not a war I want to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, sir. Anyone else in opposition? Councilmember Sheehy? Oh, go ahead, sir. You go ahead, sir.
name's Lee Sports, 1249 Bamboo. Gonna be really short.
Yes, sir.
So traffic is an issue, but all of us feel that coming out, he's growing up and the way the house looks and everything. Yeah, we want it, as a neighborhood, we want it cleaned up. Try to come out there on a Sunday afternoon and you're looking, trying to make your way onto the road. You're worried you're gonna get hit because you can't see anything. So as soon as we saw it go for sale, the zoning, we're going like, yay, somebody's going to fix the place up, clean it up, we're gonna be able to get out of here easier. It's gonna look so much better for the neighborhood. But then we saw what they were gonna put in. The traffic ideas come up and it's like, oh no. I just wanna make one more point, is that right over here, there's a road called National Drive. And City of Charleston come out and cut the street off. Too many cars, we're using it for a shortcut. Just like some of the other neighborhoods here in West Ashley. It's been proven that people will do that. So that's our response. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Anyone else in opposition? Councilmember Sheehy?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner members, for your service to the city of Charleston and for your volunteer work. The good work that you do for us. Let me just sort of back up a little bit and give the commission members some perspective of what we're dealing with today. This is an application to rezone a single-family residence into a commercial office space. Whatever we do here, that rezoning is going to run with the land. And I say that because we have to take into account not only what the applicant is asking us to do this afternoon, but what the future use of this property will look like a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later down the road. And while Mr. Morgan brought out the fact that this has some limited commercial purpose, this property can be used more than just for a medical office, an engineer's office, a law office, something along those lines. The school that's proposed right now is a daycare facility, and there's some need for a daycare facility. We are in a daycare facility desert over in West Ashley. We need daycare facilities. I know that from personal experience, my own son and his wife, and they're in desperate need to look for a daycare facility in West Ashley. We have other needs in West Ashley as well. We welcome the investment that several people have made. Harper's over here with Harper's gas station. We're working with them on a plan they have further down the road. And we welcome that. We want that. We're not here to stifle the development and the natural change that's happening in West Ashley. As many of you know, I'm chairman of the West Ashley Revitalization Commission. Mr. Pullman mentioned to you Plan West Ashley. And this core element about Plan West Ashley is that as we go through the revitalization of West Ashley, we are obligated, and we adopted this as a city, as part of this plan, and members of the commission sat with us as we went through the final adoption of this plan, is to preserve the character of the neighborhood. And if you think that this rezoning is going to violate that, then your vote must be no. You cannot grant this application. And I will warn you that this application for a daycare facility can easily turn into a secondary school or a kindergarten. So the use beyond just a daycare facility can expand to something much more active, much more damaging to this neighborhood. The plans for this application calls for a daycare facility of 140 students. And as other speakers have mentioned to you before, that means at the minimum, 140 cars coming into this neighborhood at one time. And if they're coming in and they're going out, that's 280. Whatever math you want to use, whatever figures you want to use, the sheer number of cars coming into this neighborhood is going to alter negatively the character of the neighborhood. The South Carolina Department of Transportation is going to allow them to ingress off Ashley Road, but is going to force them to go through Winston Street, which is right into the heart of the neighborhood. If you take a step back further, try to understand the overall component of this neighborhood. We're talking about Old Town Acres, Heathwood, and Lenovar, which are bordered by Ashley River Road and Old Town Road. And the traffic out there, as mentioned by other folks, is in the morning and the afternoon heavy. And on Old Town Road, which I have the privilege of coming in and out of on my commute into downtown, there's much less travel than it is on Ashley River Road. And as Mr. Gosdale pointed out earlier, folks have a tendency to try to avoid Ashley River Road. They cut through to get to Old Town Road, because it's a lot easier. The cars coming in to drop off will have to go through this neighborhood, which will then be cutting through 3 different neighborhoods, parts of Old Town, parts of Heathwood, and parts of Lenovar at the same time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will violate the core concept of Plan West Ashley and your zoning code of preserving the nature and character of the area. Jen Harmon is not going to speak tonight, but she is the president of the Neighborhood Association. These folks are the unsung heroes that we have in our community, because they serve in very much in part as to what is the sense, what is the temperature, what is the character of what's going on in the neighborhood. And her presence here speaks volumes. Mr. Gosdale, Judge Gosdale, who usually has to listen to us, has an opportunity to talk, and he organized within 48 hours a meeting that I attended in his backyard with the residents who came in. Even though he served really poor gin the other night, I'll pass around the list of folks who attended that meeting. Some of them most of them are here tonight and are outside, and they are adamantly opposed to this. Certainly, this property is going to not be used again for our residents. So there are other alternatives available to the owner, to the applicant, to decide what else to do with this property. And if you can rezone it to an area that will sort of fit, not sort of, it will fit into what exists out there. A beauty salon, a lawyer's office, an architect's office, a medical office, something along those lines, that will have such a less of a negative impact overall with this neighborhood. So I would ask all of you to please consider what we're dealing here tonight with. We're dealing with a neighborhood that is really very much into transition. We can go through anecdotal notices of how that neighborhood has changed. We all know that it is working. Revitalization is alive and well in West Ashley. Our obligation to our community, however, as we go through this process of revitalization, to do it smartly and to take into account what I started off by saying, preserving the character of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Would the applicant like to respond?
Yeah, I'll just take a brief minute.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that prior to making the application and passed out flyers on Winston Street, we did ask city staff if this neighborhood had an HOA. And it was our understanding that there was not a recognized HOA within the neighborhood. So it's.
Speak up. So, yeah.
It's just simply our apology that we missed the neighborhood association because frankly, we were unaware of that for that area. So that's all I want to cover on that. You know, we've listened to input, we revisited the site plan. There's a traffic consultant that's been engaged that's kind of pending an outcome of the planning commission meeting to be able to provide an updated traffic study and study how this may affect the neighborhood. We've engaged DOT since the last meeting that we've had about access on Winston again. So we are working to address issues that have been raised and concerns. You know, but at this stage of the project development process, it's not yet a concrete answer that we can provide on how that's addressed.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's going to close the public aspect of this item. I'd ask commission members comments, questions, or motions. Ms. Jacobs, go ahead.
I'm gonna ask for some indulgence here from my commission members because I've thought about this. And I tried to write it down so I wouldn't ramble on. But I think we've heard very strongly from this neighborhood tonight, your passion, and I would like to add something to this. First of all, on this piece of property, we have what Bill Moody used to call a congulium, a kind of a confluence of conflicting information and concerns. But I think that we have to look at this important. We have actually three options here tonight. As it looks like it's consistent with the street. We can deny the zoning based on the concerns of the neighborhood, or we can defer the zoning because this property and its house has a significant historic nature. It's actually been deemed to be eligible for National Register for Historic Places. I think in part of your comments, you got an extensive piece of information about that. But first, I want to give you three things that guide me right now. One comes directly from our ordinance for the Planning Commission. It's section 54-944, and it says, unless initiated by the Planning Commission, all proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance, zoning map, which this application is, to be pursued by City Council shall be reviewed by the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission shall study the need and justification, for the change based upon a determination of the following facts. The possible effects of the change in the ordinance or map on the character of a zone district, a particular piece of property, a neighborhood, and the community. We have to look at all of these things individually. Under Plan West Ashley, on the very second page, under vision, in the first section called upgraded community design and land, the very first community concern was listed. The West Ashley community wants to preserve its unique neighborhood character. We adopted that plan for the city. The most recently adopted city plan on page 43 under cultural resources recommendation says uphold historic preservation as a form of sustainable development by promoting and creating incentives for rehabilitating and adapting historic buildings for new uses. And I'm looking at all three of those considerations with respect to this zoning tonight. Things start here with the Planning Commission. We make decisions on the most basic thing, which is land. After that, these projects of this nature usually go through our TRC process, our DRB process, and our BZA process. And I feel it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we do as our ordinance asks and not only look at this particular piece of property, but also the neighborhood and the community. And while a GS zoning based on completely appropriate considering the highly commercial nature in Andrews Boulevard and the maps that we've seen, I think the fact that this historic piece of property sits at the corner of a very robust neighborhood where the neighbors are concerned about the degradation of the property at this point, but also the impact of traffic on their neighborhood. We need to very much consider this. Not to mention that there is inevitably going to be a demolition request on this building. And this building was built in 1932. It's stated it's been built in 1950, but it passes the toilet test, which you go in and you lift the lid of the toilet and see what the date is stamped on it. It's a 1940. It's a 1940 stamp on the toilet in that house. And a 1939 burial. This house was built by Mr. I.D. Peak, who was responsible for the boulevard, St. Andrews Boulevard. He was responsible for getting the water West Ashley. He was on our house. He was our house representative. He was responsible with Hugh Lane getting our bank West Ashley. He was responsible for getting our post office West Ashley. The man that lived in this house until he passed away he developed Avondale. He developed the Avondale businesses. This historic information was part of your comment package tonight, so I won't go any further with that. In addition to all that I've said, you've heard me speak on this before. Corner properties that buffer neighborhoods from commercial activity need to be critically evaluated. All heard from the consistent residential border, as I call it, commercial viability and residential livability. in an area of the city that is predominantly suburban, we should use this lens more than anything else to consider the rezoning of this property. And after listening tonight, I'm going to make a motion that we deny this zoning.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. There's a motion to deny the application. Other comments from commission members? Second.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. I'm a comment as well. You know, I rode by this property, spent some time there yesterday. It's amazing. When I was in high school at Bishop England, I had a good friend of mine, Eddie Finnerty, that lived right back there. And I think his dad had that property, Bev, and I rode back there and I thought, you know, if this property had me and Miss Jacobs had fought this over there in the Ashley Bridge District. There was a piece of property on, it had a St. Andrews Boulevard, excuse me, had a Savannah Highway address, and it was on Parish Road. And they wanted to rezone it. It reminded me of that a little bit because they actually knew they wouldn't get a Parish Road address rezoned. So they changed the address to be a South Savannah Highway address. Thinking that it would be more palatable. And I thought to myself, you know, if this had an address of Winston Drive versus Ashley River Road, I would be talking about it. But it's a big piece of property. It's an interesting piece. I always thought, I told Mr. Morgan that if it was subdivided, maybe the front could be something and the back of the house remain as is, but that's not what's before us. So I'm opposed to this application too. I heartburn over it. And I think those corner lots are essential, and it is right in the middle of that neighborhood. So there is a motion by Ms. Jacobs, second by Ms. Harrison. Any other comments from commission members? Mr. Lassane, Mr. Bailey, either one.
Ask a couple of questions. Christopher, I don't know if you saw the exhibit that the applicant handed out. And do you concur with the way it's labeled here, that all of these adjacent parcels are general office?
Well, the map that is on the second page, yeah, this is our zoning map. So that shows the general office and the commercial around there, and then the parcels to the county are in their overlay, and essentially they have CC or community commercial designations in that overlay.
And one of the residents mentioned that the law firm on the opposite corner was not
An objectionable use. Is that zone general office?
It's actually zoned residential office.
Okay.
And interestingly, you can't have a daycare or not a daycare, a preschool or elementary or whatever in a residentially office zoned residential office zone property. You can in general office, but you can't in residential office.
okay.
I have a hard time. I feel like use is why most of these folks are here tonight. And I think it's why I struggle with this, because clearly I will slide over before I disagree with Ms. Jacobs. I don't personally think that we should jump through hoops to try to keep that dilapidated residential structure there. And I think the owner of this parcel, based on everything that's around it and the character of that road, deserves some sort of commercial zoning. I don't think anyone's going to ever live in that house. And so I think that the use is what's really driving the angst here. And so personally, to me, it meets every test for being a commercial site. I know it's a different context, but I mean, we're sitting here with a beautiful residential neighborhood behind us, all the buildings on Calhoun Street, where my office is across the street. There's a beautiful neighborhood. So I think there's a way for commercial and residential to coexist. And when we have a school here too, so maybe I'm making a bad point, but I support commercial use of the property. But I can't vote for something that's gonna potentially bring all those cars into the neighborhood. So I think it's a tough call. I think it's a tougher call though than so.
Ms. Bailey, Ms. Harrison.
So, number one, when neighborhoods show up, and I think this is very impactful for us as a commission to hear people and understand that. And my perspective is a little bit different from Ms. Jacobs and from Mr. Bailey's, because when I look at RO versus GO, I look at how big the building can be on that site. And in GO, there's no minimum footprint. There's no side setbacks. There's no front setbacks. But in residential office, there are those requirements where you can park, how big your building can be, how much of a footprint your building can be. And so that's where I kind of look at, this idea of, uses versus how you use, the type of actual activity that happens. It's how do you use the actual land underneath? And that I think what y'all are saying is that the bigger the project, the more impactful it will be on the neighborhood, whereas something that is smaller and low impact, be it RO zoning, would be substantially different. So that's why I can support your motion based upon hearing from the neighborhood, but also understanding the maximum that can be built on a GO site, a general office site, and understanding what that could be as an impact on the neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Mr. Lasane.
Yeah, I share the concerns of Mr. Bailey and Ms. Harrison, and actually, Mr. Bailey expressed a lot of what I wanted to say, so I won't repeat what he said. But I think that without a better explanation from the applicant about how the traffic would be handled to mitigate the impact on the neighborhood, it's tough to support. And I agree, Councilman Shade said this, it's been referred to, this is not a viable residence anymore. Even if somebody wanted to live there, I mean, it's got 1.4 acres on Ashley River Road that's going to be comped to all those businesses. I mean, you couldn't afford to live there even if you wanted to, unless you were just really wealthy. So that's not a viable residence. And I thought about the RO too. It does seem like, I mean, when I first looked at this, I thought this needs commercial zoning. If you look, it's kind of an odd duck on Ashley River Road. It's the only lot in that stretch that's not commercially zoned. It's not a viable residence, so it needs commercial zoning, but a general office, as Ms. Harrison said, is not appropriate for all the reasons we've heard. So I don't need to go through that. I would say the applicant, the fourth option from Ms. Jacobs, three options would be residential office zoning. I don't know that we want to do that at this point, but I would ask the property owner when they hear this, or the applicant, to consider a use that would be more appropriate for the neighborhood and a residential office type use there. So for that reason, I will support Ms. Jacobs' motion. And I'm grateful for all the folks who came out tonight. I know it's a lot of you came a distance to come downtown, and it's not easy. So your comments did have an impact on me. So I'm grateful for your attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Lasane. Any other comments?
I would just like to say, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the consultant when he stated that they did not recognize that there was an HOA. But as a neighborhood association president for North Central, I truly understand that when you're overlooked, you're not an HOA, but you are a neighborhood association. It is vitally important for those that are coming into your community to do their due diligence and seek you out. Garnishing what you guys are here tonight stating. And so while I do support what Ms. Jacobs has said and all the other commissioners as well, there's a lot of things, traffic mitigation, things that there's a lot of other things that really need to be addressed. And with that being said, I will support Ms. Jacobs' motion as well.
Thank you, ma'am. And there's a motion on the floor by Ms. Jacobs, second by Ms. Harrison. And I would like to say, and I think the applicant hears it very clearly, we'd love you to, and you know who the neighborhood association is now, so we look forward to y'all getting together and us visiting this again. All in favor of the motion by Ms. Jacobs, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? So it's unanimous vote. Thank you all for coming. Y'all have a good evening. Next item on the agenda is Plan Unit Development HUD amendments. I'm gonna give you all a second to quiet down a minute. Ms. Harp, you be dealing with this? I'm not gonna forget her, that's for sure. Oh, no, I'm not gonna let her. So the next item on the agenda is Plan Unit Development HUD amendments. Number one, 2310 Henry Tecklenburg, Essex Farms, West Ashley, TMS number 309-000-083. Approximately 2.39 acres, request amendment to a portion of the Essex Farms Village Center Plan Unit Development PUD. The master, I guess that is continued. It's master plan development guidelines to change the use for TMS 309-000-0483 from EFVC BD Business District to EFVC LI Light Industrial and to limit uses on EFVC LI as amended herein. Ms. Harp. Thank you.
This application seeks to amend the Essex Farms Village Center Plan Unit Development document by including that parcel that we see on the screen right there is 309-000-0483 and rezoning it to include it as the EFVC LI, which means light industrial. The property may seem familiar to you because they came last year, I believe, to include that parcel to the right and rezone it to the LI for a Dominion Utility Operations Center. Now they're including that parcel and we want to include it as the parcel went on the market. And now they want to include it as part of the operation center. The rezoning means that the parcel 483 will meet the same restrictions that were presented in the PUD. And the uses listed on the document are the only uses allowed on this parcels, regardless of the zoning as LI. No other changes to the document are proposed. This amendment was reviewed by TRC, Technical Review Committee, and found to be in compliance with the standards of each department. In front of you, you have a revised document. Thanks to Ms. Jacobs, we found a couple of discrepancies, but they have been corrected. So they have, that is, the revision was TMS number and ownership name. So the staff recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, Ms. Harp. Is the applicant here? Yes, sir.
How you doing? I'm Trey Linton with Forsberg Engineering. We were the civil engineer for the PUD amendment. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone here in favor of the application? Anyone here in opposition to the application? Not that to close the public aspect. Commission members, discussion, comments, motion. Harrison moves for approval, second by Ms. Bryant Jenkins. Any other comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? So that's a unanimous vote in favor. Thank you, sir, for coming too. Tell Mr. Forsberg I said hello. The next item under PUD amendments is number 20 Castle Ray Road, Hemingwood, West Ashley, TMS number 35302000167, approximately 1.8 acres. Request approval of zoning to amend zoning ordinance City of Charleston by amending ordinance 2006-187, which adopts the Hemingwood Plan Unit Development HW PUD Master Plan and Development Guidelines for property located at Castle Ray Road, TMS number 35302000167 is amended as appendix of a zoning ordinance to delete references to park common area, include subdivision 7 park area, and its entirety increase the total number of
of single-family lots with Hemingwood PUD to 64 lots and 63, and to permit the tax map number, which I've quoted a couple of times, to use for a single-family detached home. Mr. Batchelder? Great, thank you. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a lot, as you can see, within a neighborhood on Castle Rays. It's a neighborhood that was first zoned in Charleston County as a planned unit development back in, I believe it was the 1980s. And it developed over time. And eventually all the properties were annexed into the city of Charleston. And when we did that, we adopted the county's PUD zoning regulations for the neighborhood. And this lot, as part of that PUD, was identified as an open space lot. And it was platted that way. And we've so here's an aerial view just showing what it looks like today. It's a wooded property.
Mr. Batchelder, let me ask, can we take that as well as the subdivision property conversion together, or should they be separate?
Well, they are intended to be together, I guess, so you could probably do that together.
Okay, why don't I just read
Okay.
that record so we
Sure.
discuss it. We
Yeah.
won't have to go. Subdivision property conversion number 1, 0 Castle Ray Road, Hemingwood, West Ashley, TMS number 353020067.28 acres, request under section 5418.15 of the zoning code, convert the parcel from common area park parcel, reserve parcel to building site for single family residence. Sorry, Mr. Batchelder, I didn't interrupt you, but I figured if we could cover them both at one time, it'd be easier.
Good idea. Thank you. So property's a wooded property right now. All the other lots in the neighborhood have homes on them. And this is the PUD document that's part of the zoning ordinance that comes from that Charleston County PUD. And more information here. So this is from the original subdivision plat. Includes this dedication statement. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because the applicant is here and he can speak to the history of the property and all that, why they think they should be entitled to this. I think that this property has just been sitting in private ownership for all these years. It was never actually used as an open space property. It was conveyed to an adjacent property owner years ago, and it's just gone through successive owners ever since. And it's been in this state of not having public access, not really being a true neighborhood open space, but looking more like a vacant lot. And it seems to me that the right thing to do would be to allow this property to be developed as a single family home for the neighborhood. This says it's a wetland area, but there is I think the applicant has information that they can share with you about that. So, so my feeling is that the lot ought to be approved. Well, the PUD amendment ought to be approved to allow this to become a single family lot. And the lot conversion should be approved by the planning.
So you recommend approval on both of those items?
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelder. Is applicant here, Mr. O'Shea?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, thank you all for being here and serving tonight. I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Ian O'Shea. I'm an attorney who represents the applicant. I will reserve my comments for any response to any public comments. I'll be happy to answer questions the commission may have. It's nice to be back before you guys. We were here in 2019. And at that time, we decided to defer to allow additional discussions between the city and us, and we're pleased to be here with city approval. We met with both the city staff as well as city legal and garnered their support and approval for our foundation for this application. So I'll be happy to speak to any questions you may have, as well as respond to any considerations that may be made during public comment. Thank you.
Do you want to give us just so I'm clear on it, just a little bit more background? I mean, I'm just not as clear as I should be. I've read it.
Sure, happy to go into it in detail to the extent that this parcel this parcel was part of a PUD that was originally formed within Charleston County before this was ever a city of Charleston property before it was annexed into the city. It was originally dedicated for the use per the plat as a park, subject to the conditions of the covenants and restrictions, which authorized the developer to amend the uses of the properties within the PUD, including the use of this park, which is exactly what this developer did as its final act. It actually conveyed the property and pursuant to a case law in South Carolina, developer's interest as well as developer's title to the successors in title and successors in interest. But pursuant to Collins v. McNeil, the Supreme Court has recognized that distinction as far as the ability to pass along developer rights. But most importantly, they actually, prior to their relinquishment, dedicated this property for individual ownership. And so as a result, we would actually state that before the city even became annexed in 1992, the developer converted this to an individual lot. So in 1993, when the city developed this ordinance, they actually, as I understand from city staff, carried over what they had been given from the county. It's evident from looking at the specific language of the parcel known as the park area in the Hemmingwood subdivision section of the ordinance that this needs revision. It calls for maintenance to be the responsibility of the homeowners association, when in fact, not only is there not a neighborhood association, there's not a homeowner association, it's been individually maintained. Unfortunately, it's become a site for a lot of people dumping illegally on the site. Our applicants, our clients' proposed use would be to convert the property to a single family dwelling to be used as a family residence for someone to live in the community. We would, of course, note that with the discussions that have been raised in the past, there's been concerns about visibility around the corner, concerns about flooding impacts. We would certainly set forth that the TRC, the DRB, and all the other entities are very familiar with the Dutch dialogues, very familiar with the ongoing discussions about the impacts of water and our abilities to live with water as the dialogue set forth. And we would ask that you do entrust those members of those folks within the city down the line to not approve a project that doesn't have an active stormwater management plan, or to not approve any other type of construction which would harm the neighborhood character. This is not a daycare, God forbid. It is a residence that we're offering within a residential community.
Thank you, Mr. That's helpful to me. Thank you, sir. Did you have a question, Mr. Bailey?
Consulted with, excuse me, one last sentence, if I may, consulted with and sought approval and obtained approval from and received a nationwide permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. There is a isolated non-title 0.07 acre wetland that they have authorized development of.
0.07, okay. Mr. Bailey, you go ahead.
That's what I was gonna ask about. Mr. Batchelder suggested he would share that information with us, so.
That's a very small piece. Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Is anyone here in support of the application? Is anyone here in opposition to the application? Yes, ma'am, go on up. Tell us who you are and where you live. Thank you.
My name is Robin Blunt, and I live in the Hemmingwood subdivision. I am one of the original purchases of a home there. When we bought our home, we were told that that lot was for every individual in the subdivision, that we owned the lot. I'm not familiar with all the verbiage of everything that's being said here basically tonight. I just know what I was told when we bought our homes. There are approximately maybe 5, I call them originals, people that still live into the neighborhood. This is like the 4th time that this has come up. It's not the 2nd and it's not the 3rd. And each time it was deemed that the property belongs to us. We were told that we could develop it into a park or some other kind of play area when and if we developed a homeowners association, which we decided not to do. My main problem is that I don't even think that the people that have bought homes, you know, our homes rotate, since then are aware of the fact that we were told that when we owned the house, we owned that lot. Second, we live like 1/8 of a mile away from the Ashley River. I do not agree with anything being torn down, any topiary, because everybody knows that helps stop the flooding. Second of all, when we have things to put out in the neighborhood, we do put it on the curb. And as someone that's lived there since it has been a subdivision, I do not see a lot of like junk. It's not piled up with junk. It is not. In fact, it's a beautiful green space. It may not have been developed, but it is a beautiful green space. And the neighborhood is still a beautiful neighborhood. The oak trees with the moss, it's beautiful. I have no problem with a house being built there, except that, you know, the flooding, I really don't like that. But then we don't know who the owner is, and we don't know how it got to be our lot to whoever owns it now. We thought we owned it. So if there's some verbiage or some law I don't understand, I'd like to be told. I'm retired. No one's come to my house to say, hey, look, we need to look into this and you don't own this property anymore. I want to send a letter. It hasn't changed hands. Seems like someone would have contacted the people of the community, since that's who it belonged to. And it's a small community. There's no more than 30 houses in that lot. So my question is, how did I become from being a part owner to no owner? I also wonder who the buyer is, because unfortunately we have a lot of large companies that buy houses, but then they rent them out. And renters don't really take care of homes the way the buyers do. That's why so many homes, you can't find them. These companies are buying them up and using them as rental space, earlobes, or whatever they're called, which truthfully is not affecting me. I mainly want to know, how did I go from owning the property with everyone else in the subdivision to whoever owns it now? And the fact of flooding, since we live less than an eighth of a mile from the Ashley River, and how is all of this done? Sorry, I have a medical problem, I have to drive out. All of this done without anybody in the neighborhood being contacted before now. The person who lives next to the lot, when he bought it, he thought it was his. He tried to expand his pool. We said, no, it's not yours to do that with. And 3 other times, someone's come and said, they've already had plans up, you know, the stakes in the ground, and we said, no. So how was it recognized then that it wasn't theirs to keep, but not now? And I'd like to ask, you know, have some answers, and, you know, I can only go along for a while.
Thank you for coming, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Thompson. I live at 2408 Cassway Road, the property directly across the street from what we're talking about today. It's kind of interesting from this perspective. I've been in this room a few times from the developer's perspective. I'm a construction consultant for a commercial developer, so it's a pretty unique spot for me today.
Glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. That being said, you know, I'm not opposed to a single family dwelling in the neighborhood. It's all about the location, right? I look at plans like this every day, help developers make the right decision when it comes to purchasing property. I think the elephant in the room is, you know, it gets referenced as a park, right? That's what they keep referencing. I mean, you look at the plans, it says jurisdictional wetlands, plain as day. You know, and I think that's the big issue here. You know, no matter what the documents say as far as how much water goes in there, I can attest living across the street that it gets, in fact, more than that, especially during a heavy rain. My yard holds water, my neighbor's yard holds water. The first neighborhood, when you come on Dogwood, is like a pond. Big rain. So I would be interesting. I know you mentioned he had, you know, the Army Corps of Engineers have looked at it and agreed to. I'd be curious to look at that document. I've done several commercial developments that have involved the Army Corps of Engineers and wetlands, so I know it's a very difficult task to get a JD approved. I'd also ask to see if any geotechnical studies have been done, or ESAs, environmental site assessments, to really truly understand the impact that this single residence would provide. You know, they reference, you know, the covenants, the HOA. There is no HOA. At this time, there could very well be in the near future if we all agree to it, which would host a whole another issue here. But, you know, one of the things in the covenants is it says, you know, section 20, changing a lot says no lot shall be excavated or earth extracted therefrom for any business purposes. No elevation changes shall be permitted, which materially, affects surface grade of surrounding lots. So what my concern is, we look at the Johns Island example, right? It got overdeveloped, still being developed. That wasn't fairly put into where all that stormwater runoff is going, right? And, the fact that this has remained a jurisdictional wetland since day one, obviously says something. You think from a developer's perspective, why would they not have built on that day one? I would have, you know what I mean? You look at the surrounding water, you've got creeks that flood that area, the hydrology of that area, actually everything flows pretty much across 61, funnels towards that area, and then works its way back down to the actual river. So that's my primary concern, right? How is this going to affect the rest of the neighborhood? I would hate for this development to happen, this water not having anywhere to go, and it affects myself, my neighbors, and everyone else. And again, going back to the park, there's a lot of natural wildlife out there. We've got kids in the neighborhood that, take the bus, walk to their house. I see them outside, my front door, staring in the woods, looking at, squirrels, the birds. There's a few owls up there. Yes, can it be cleaned up a little bit? Sure. And that's just going to be a community effort from us to actually turn that into what it truly was designed to be, was a park for the community. So that's my spiel. I hope you guys consider that and the effects that, the stormwater has and rain runoff will have on this property if that elevation is changed, and how that'll affect everybody else.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lawrence Brubaker. I used to live right next to that park for about a decade. And I was here the last time that this issue came up, and I was really moved by the entire group of people that came into it tonight. And the last group that was speaking about how we came together as a community. I was touched by that. I've owned a business in Charleston for the last decade, done a ton of charity work. When Hurricane Matthew came through, I was out on Guatemala Island helping my friends clear trees. The community of Charleston is fantastic. I'm proud to be a part of it. I was happy to live there, and I have issues that took place during it. And those issues are separate, and I'm dealing with them separately. That's part of why I don't live there now. But I do have a lot of details on exactly what the reason that park is the way that it is. As research for the other issue, I've discovered quite a bit. As Mr. O'Shea alluded to, there is a Army Corps of Engineers permit to be able to allow to fill it in 0.07 of an acre. I can assure you that wetlands is not 0.07 of an acre. The actual plat for that's registered with the county will say on there that the entire parcel is 0.28 of an acre, and the wetlands portion is 0.17 of an acre. So even if the applicant had the opportunity to fill in the 0.07, there would be a big 0.10 portion of an acre that can't be filled in, that would fill in with water. Reason that it is the way that it is when the subdivision was built in 1989, they had to come through and they had to do a survey because of the laws, the EPA, federal government designated wetlands. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers came in and designated that as a wetlands. Now, they said isolated. I would argue it's not isolated. I have photos if you'd like to see, but I'll just describe it. When the water flows down from this area here, it all comes down and gathers. And the wetlands delineation, the actual paperwork that I received from the Army Corps of Engineers, says that it is because of unique high ground that causes that hydrology, it causes that water to go down into the spot. And if you look at the plans, the actual plans that are registered with the county, it shows on the drainage plan for the subdivision that the water all comes down. And as Mr. Thompson alluded to, it fills with about 100,000 gallons of water. Now, when the last time that we addressed this issue while I was still living there and I came and spoke against it, I did not have the plans that are registered with the county. Now, I believe I sent that all over to Mrs. Jacobs in March, I think. Actually, I wasn't even going to speak tonight, except for I was speaking with Mr. Thompson. And since I have knowledge of it, I agreed, sure, I'll come and do it. After that last meeting, I went and got the plans from the county. And the gentleman who handed me the plans said, hey, we don't have a dog in this fight. that water's got to go somewhere. And that is the smartest single statement that I have heard anybody say about this property since the very beginning. The amount of water that travels down into there during a heavy rain is exactly what it is. It's about 100,000 gallons of water that it comes in, fills up to a certain point. It goes into a junction box that flows underneath the street and goes into this drainage reservoir. There's another pipe that goes underneath that section and goes to this drainage reservoir. Then it goes out the back through here, and then it goes off into Bull Creek. It's always done. I found through the McCready collection, which one of the things I love about Charleston is the history of Charleston. I have a plat from April of 1760 that was done for Captain Peter Fuller. And the plat that was, the survey that was created for Captain Fuller, dig it out, shows this wetlands. It's on there, on that parchment, old ink dot thing from 1760. It's on there because it has always flowed this way. Now, I was very curious once I got that document. So I contacted the state geologist, and William Dorr III, Bill Dorr III, emailed me back and told me, and I have the email if you guys would like to see it, that the current layout of the land of this portion of West Ashley, and I don't know if you're familiar, if you look at the broader picture, all of West Ashley in this area where Ashley River Road goes through the center of it, the reason Ashley River Road is there is because the water drains off one side of it. It drains off where Church Creek is, which I believe you have a moratorium, or at least you did have a moratorium against building in the Church Creek drainage basin because there isn't enough drainage available. And it drains off the other direction. That's why that road is there originally from way back. Let's put it into context. According to Mr. Dorr, this has been this way for 20,000 years or better, which means since the last time the waters of the ocean receded off this land, it created these channels that exist. Now, the Army Corps of Engineers, this is where it gets a little dicey for me, say that it's isolated. I don't agree with that assessment because it's not isolated now. When it was before this subdivision was built, this went from here straight up around and into Bull Creek, and it's listed that way on that 760 survey, and all the other documentation that I can find shows the exact same thing. Why they put it that, said that, I don't know. But they did say that it was because of the hydrology that is there and it forms that. My concern, because I've become a part of the community and because I do care about it, is that I would like for all of you to understand the history. This lady here, which I'm very sorry that we never had a chance to meet. And it breaks my heart. The one thing that really bothers me out of all of this, I went and spoke to Jonathan, who was my neighbor right across the street for quite a long time. And next to him was Dorothy Nelson. I don't know if you know Dorothy. Dorothy, I found out yesterday, had a stroke and she's in recovery and I'm going to go see her. My daughter's going to go see her. We love her. Charleston's a wonderful community. Everybody seems to care about each other. And I can't say enough about that, but I want to answer her questions because I have the answers. When the neighborhood was built, the home that I lived in was purchased by Richard Sawicki and his wife. Squire's home was, they were the developer for the entire project. Squire's home's liquidated and they didn't have an HOA at the time. Now the covenants, they do a lot for, if 90% of the neighbors get together and decide they want an HOA, they get together, every single owner, listed owner of a home can have a vote and they can create an HOA. In the opposite context of that, every single, if you read the covenants, every single person that owns a home in there, those covenants apply to, and there's still, I believe Mr. O'Shea, the last time he spoke, he pointed out that the operating document for the neighborhood is in fact the covenants. And they still exist, they're still in force, they go for every 10 years. So they went 30 years to the original, which would have been 2020. And then they re-upped it. Nobody says stop. Now they're in effect for another 10 years. It's listed right into the contract. So on that part of the contract, it gives the rights, if there's no HOA, each individual homeowner has the right to enforce any single one of these covenants. In other words, what Jonathan alluded to, where you cannot change the surface grid that affects the water, you can sue to stop it. And you're also entitled to recover damages. It says it right in it. So
I'm not trying to stifle you. No. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So anyways, the covenants are still in effect, and I would recommend that you look into what I was saying. But let's get to the history of this property. So Mr. Sawicki
he owns the property with his wife. Her name's Carol. Carol passes away. Mr. Sawicki moves. His son Chester is signed over to him. When the Squires home liquidated, they basically gave that parcel to Mr. Sawicki. He was a caretaker of it. Now, I recognize that Mr. Batchelder, I suppose, was saying that it's not taken care of and that people dump garbage. I have photos of it. You can look on the GIS all the way up until 2009. This was very nice. The whole time that Mr. Sawicki was paying the taxes on it, he was taking care of it. He was picking up sticks. It was exactly what it is, neighborhood park. After he passed it to his son Chester, Chester sold it to the woman who sold it to me. That's where the decay began on this parcel. Susan Allen bought the home, and she informed Chester, and I spoke to Chester, that she wanted to develop that land. She wanted to sell it to a developer friend of hers. Chester told her, I don't think you can do that. But after she got her hands on it, she 3 months later sold it to a person to have it developed. The person who bought it was unable to develop it. He got a mortgage on it. I got the mortgage off of, as the gentleman that was here earlier, who said he could do discovery.
Yeah, I'm not trying to.
Yeah, you seem like you are. Let me finish up. So the mortgage was incorrect. They put a fake address on it. The mortgage went into default. The bank came back because the bank now has foreclosure option to buy it first, and they did. And when they bought it, they realized you can't develop it. Then they just stopped paying the taxes. Then it went to tax auction. Now, the interesting thing in all this, and I don't really want to get into detail about it, but the individual who is the applicant now is the same real estate agent that sold me my home. Now, the only thing I want to say about that is the day that I moved here in February of 2011, when we toured the home, that same real estate agent, my agent, he was my agent, buyer's agent. I asked him about that parcel, and he told me it's a green space. You can't develop it. 2 years later, he bought it at tax auction and came back to me and started sending me letters saying I needed to pay him for my items that were encroaching. That's all I want to say about that part of it. But now he would like to develop it. I think it's important that this woman here understand the history of this property, why it's in the state that it is, that it used to be taken care of, and that the people that live in the neighborhood would love nothing more than to be able to clean it up and use it for what it was originally designed for. Trim it up, I mean, for children, whatever, what have you. Right. And now, the other thing that's important to notice is Charleston's plan for West Ashley, the 2018 plan that's put up on the website, is asking to increase the severity of the regulations for wetlands and whether you destroy them. Now, the application that Mr. O'Shea's client put into the Army Corps of Engineers doesn't list this as a wetlands. The survey that he submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers removed the drainage easement from all the way around it and removed the wetlands. When I found out about it, which was when I still owned a home, I went and I talked to the people that designed the neighborhood, and they told me that that survey was improper. Then I went and talked to my surveyors, and they also told me that survey was improper. So then I submitted a complaint to the labor licensing committee of the state, and I told them that that was not a proper survey because according to a Class A survey and surveyor's manual, line T says any survey that's done that references the original plat of record must contain easements that are on it. I filed a complaint. They investigated it, they found that I was correct, and they put it onto the Office of Disciplinary Counsel for further investigation. I don't know what's going to come of that, but I do think that the information that the Army got when they issued that is a little bit incorrect, and maybe the Army should relook at this because it is in fact a jurisdictional wetlands. I have the original document from the Army when they went through, and it says jurisdictional wetlands, that is their determination. And it was done to prevent flooding. One other thing that I would like to add, this retention pond, when that water flows over here, in the original plans, it calls for an emergency overflow in the back. We went and inspected the back of that pond. There is no emergency overflow. So not only are you putting at risk the potential for flooding, but there's no other place for that water to go out of there if that gets blocked on this other side. And the last thing that I would like to say is, in your plan of 2018, you are calling for protection of wetlands to the point where you're actually talking about building artificial wetlands. You have a fully functional are U.S. Army Corps of Engineers jurisdictional wetlands. And on the application that I read just recently today, as a matter of fact, I found it. The application says any jurisdictional determinations, and the application says no data found. I don't know why that is, because it was the Army that gave me the original determination. I don't know where those wires got crossed, but it is exactly what it purports to be. And it was put there because of the amount of water. Now, you gotta understand, the water that flows down through here, all this green space that's in here, slows it down. All, as this woman was saying, the topiary, I guess is the word she used. This water that flows down the street at an angle comes down at a tremendous pace. It goes into here. This water flows down in, one more second. This water flows down here at a slower pace because of all the green space, the ground cover, leaves, the dirt. It regulates the water that's running off from the heavy rain. So if you fill it in, perhaps you want to have some type of analysis done to determine whether or not that's a good idea. Really, I don't think I have anything much more to add.
I appreciate you coming forward. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thanks. Was anyone else would like to speak in opposition to the application? Address any concerns?
Be available to answer any questions the members of the commission may have. And lastly, just hand out this document, which I would ask you to pass around. I do not have enough copies for everyone, but what it shows is the proximity of this parcel to Dogwood Park, which is a city-run park. You will see it as steps from this property. These members have a park they have access to this community, not to mention, as I set forth earlier in my comments, just that as discussed through the city process with the staff as well as legal, this parcel was pursuant to the covenants which every owner within the subdivision purchased their property subject to was converted lawfully to a individually owned property. So thank you very much.
You know, we keep hearing this is a park, but you have a deed to this property. Someone has a deed to this property. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Harris.
So that essentially is gonna be my initial question, because I actually remember this application is. And I think you have to answer the first, the question for the first person who spoke, which is, I'm told I own X. I have a bundle of sticks, and there are 10 of us who have a part of this bundle of sticks. And you can't break that bundle. Basic 101, first year. And what you're telling me is that that bundle can now be broken. And I think that's the first question that I want to know is, how were you able to break that bundle?
Absolutely, wonderful question.
Other than through a tax sale?
That's right.
I don't even try it.
That's right.
I would trust a tax sale.
Through the covenants and restrictions. So what happened was there was an owner of this property who owned an entire tract, a huge tract of land. When they decided to turn into a subdivision, they have rights as the developer to set up the rules of the subdivision. Those rules govern the way that the subdivision becomes subdivided and how the subdivision is run. Those rules set forth that the developer has the right to alter the uses set forth within that, and they followed those rules. So respectfully, anyone who purchased in the subdivision purchased them subject to the rules. And if the rules were followed, which city staff and legal have agreed with, the rules allow for this parcel to be converted to individual use. And I will mention too, just the amount of time that's passed. It's been 31 years since this has been an individually owned parcel with taxes paid on it. No members of the community using it as a park. With the adjacent park, which is just nearby, they're not being deprived of a park. It's actually a property that was lawfully pursuant to the covenants, turned to an individual use.
Ms. Harrison, you had something else? Mr. Saint, did you have a question or just?
I don't have a question, I'm sorry.
Great, that is going to close the public aspect of this. We'll now have commission members discuss. Mr. Saint.
Thank you. For me, we get a lot of hard questions. This one's not hard. Because I read the dedication statement in the PUD, it says, the Squires Home Incorporated in recording this plat of Hemingwood subdivision community has designated certain areas of land as common areas intended for the use by the homeowners in Hemingwood subdivision community for recreation and other related activities, period, full stop. I'm not disputing the fact that the law allowed the developer to convey the properties to someone else. But, and that's their right, but it's our job here in this body to consider the zoning, and the zoning says that's a park. And I don't believe that we should be in the business of turning what is it is legally privately owned property, but the zoning is dedicated it's dedicated as a park, so that's an easy one for me.
The sentence does continue, and that's fully provided.
Yeah, we.
This is my, and I'm gonna quickly say this is possible. So from a fact-finding position that we are in as planning commissioners, we're talking about we're talking about amending the ordinance, the PUD ordinance. And I guess, from my perspective, the covenants don't get us to that amendment piece. And because,
Zoning.
yeah, the first part is the amendment to the ordinance.
Let me ask you this, Ms. Spencer, maybe you could address, I'm sorry. City legal looked at this. Yeah. And then conveyed. City legal looked at this and said it was a privately owned piece of property. That's what I'm trying to get to. I mean, I hear Mr. Lassane, but city legal was involved with this?
Well, involved, and I believe that they were in agreement with the situation. Now I'm speaking for them, and I can't do that.
But they, your understanding is they agreed with him that it was a privately owned piece of property. So they must, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Lassane, but, and again, I'm not a lawyer, and
I know you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So I'm talking about, I guess, I know we're taking it collectively together, right?
Yes.
Because we have an ordinance that we can already apply to this question, but I'm talking about the first step, which is, can they amend this PUD? We just did an amendment for the PUD, but we know that the developer is in control of that PUD that is being amended. Right now, there is not a developer in control of this PUD. And the only people that could control the PUDs, the change of a PUD should have been, I think at this juncture, the people who are the majority owners of the PUD, that bundle of underlying sticks. And that would be my analysis, is that I don't think that the application is proper because the amendment isn't coming from the co-owners.
Yes, ma'am.
And I will only add, I appreciate you always have great synthesis. I also would just like to state for the record, the city just bought out a whole bunch of land in the Church Creek Basin that flooded constantly because it was misdeveloped. And I would have serious heartburn on a piece of land that's been, because I've driven out there and it's always wet. Regardless of what somebody says is 0.07 or 0.17, it doesn't matter. It's maintaining water for that neighborhood. And just bought property, demolished homes because of that. I'm real hard time going against that philosophy right now.
I hear you. Anyone else like to speak on the matter? Again, I know, and again, if this went anywhere, it'd have to go to TRC and they would have to look at that very, very closely if it goes anywhere. So I hear you. Is there any questions, comments?
Motion to disapprove the both items.
And I'll second.
Is a motion to deny both items? Is that what you're saying? Okay. And Ms. Jacobs seconded that. Questions, comments, other comments? Again, I have heartburn on this. I hear you. I felt like the flooding issue was an issue to me, but again, I knew anything that we did, if we approved it, and I hear what Mr. Lassane's saying, it's a sticky slope, and I guess somebody legal is gonna have to say who owns that property. But again, I hear what you're saying and I respect that.
Well, and you have referred to me, so I want to say, I don't dispute the process by which this became legally owned by an individual.
Right.
But the intent of the PUD was that this be a park.
Yes, sir.
According to this PUD. And that's what we're being asked to amend, is the PUD.
Right.
We're not being asked to weigh in on who owns the property or
Right.
why. And that's why the intent, I believe the intent of the PUD was for it to be a park, and I think it
Yes,
should
sir.
remain that way.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor to deny by Mr. Lassane, second by Ms. Jacobs. So the questions, comments, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I'm gonna oppose it. But, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor of the application tonight, and one in opposition. Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and we appreciate y'all's work. The next item on the agenda, so we had is subdivision. Number 1, 16 Cross Creek Drive, Cross Creek, James Island, TMS number 424000013, approximately 4.48 acres. Request approval of subdivision concept plan for 51 townhome units, zone general business GB. Ms. Harp, I don't hear you. Y'all quit switching that chair so fast. I don't know what's there.
Well, the applicant in this case is requesting subdivision concept plan approval for 4.48 acres on Cross Creek Drive.
Yes, ma'am.
On James Island. The project consists in the creation of new rights of way to serve 51 parcels for single-family attached units, as well as some open space. The proposed rights of ways are to be private, and the new parcels conform to the subdivision requirements for single-family attached parcels in the city of Charleston zoning ordinance, and there are no wetlands on this parcel.
That's good to hear.
The property is on GB General Business. General Business zoning allows for single-family detached and attached residential dwelling units. The surrounding parcels contain single-family residential neighborhoods, as well as a variety of other uses, including educational, commercial, and medical uses. The concept plan was reviewed by the Technical Review Committee, and after 3 submittals, was found to be in compliance with the concept plan standards of each department. Just a reminder that concept plan approval doesn't mean that they can start construction now. They will have to come back to TRC for preliminary plat and road construction approval before they can get approval to.
I'll go through the whole process.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is just a concept. And based on the approval from TRC, a staff recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Applicant with us? Yes, sir.
Russ Stephen with Stephen Whiteside. Thank you for hearing us tonight. We're excited about this project. We think it's a great infill project, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you, sir. Is anyone here in support of the application? Is anyone here opposing the application? Yes, ma'am. You'll come on up and tell us who you are and where you live.
Lisa Bazzelli, I live on Town Park Lane, which is lakeside directly behind. I'm not necessarily opposed or in favor, but I am here because I've come every time we've had developers trying to develop that piece.
You're just a concerned citizen.
I am a concerned resident, and I will, if I'm allowed to direct to you all, representing all of our neighbors. When Avalon was built on Maybank.
Ma'am, we want you to address us.
Oh, sorry. When Avalon.
I'm taking this, so after you talk to us, if there's a question, he'll be able to answer to. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
When Avalon on Maybank was built, and when the standard on Maybank was built, it's adjacent to the backside of our neighborhood. Those developers met with us, had in-depth conversations, had some letters of understanding in terms of privacy and noise and quality of living and landscaping and so forth. So I'm not foolish enough to think that it won't be developed. It's just, I would like to have open, on the books, open communication with the developer, particularly since one side of Lakeside, which I think is over here, there's a drainage ditch and all of our units back up to their proposed development. So some sort of privacy and so forth. So that's all I want to say. And thank you all for your commitment to our
Thanks for
city.
being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Altman.
My name is Charles Altman. I'm the president of the Walton Creek Place Property Owners Association. I live at 39 Walton Creek Place. Now, this, you can't see it on this map, but we are across Maybank Highway. There's an easement, a drainage easement, that flows across our property. And it's eroding. And I spoke to Mr. Jeter, who was sitting on my side a couple of days ago last week. He said the drainage will be reduced from what it is by 30%. And that'll do us a lot of good. tried to get the city to do something about the drainage easement. The easement was given to the city 40 years ago. But it's eroding. Got the shopping center, you've got the apartment complexes, they all drain behind our property. Got flooding problems. It's happening. Right now, I agree with this. There's a parking lot there. It was a shopping center. It's hardscape. I had the impression that there would be more landscaping and less hardscape. That looked like a lot of hardscape. Minimum amount of reduction is not going to do us any good. We're sitting here suffering. The city says they don't have money to do it. They got to do this study and that study. Meanwhile, we keep getting more and more water and more of our land is being eroded away. We're having to go through right now, and we're just got plans from an engineer to put up a great longer seawall down the easement to protect us. We shouldn't have to do that. If this is going to be allowed, there needs to be a very strong limitation on what water disperse through that easement. Should have happened with the shopping center. It should have happened with every apartment complex. And I can tell you that nobody come to my association. Been president for 5 months now. I've been on the board for 4 years. Nobody, when the apartment complex was built behind the shopping center, nobody came to us. We're affected by it to talk to us about what happened. Until there's something done, some responsibility of what's going to happen to us, this should be allowed. The parking lot should be torn up and let it soak in there. But this should not be allowed until there's some strong regulations and or the city comes in and does something, or the surrounding neighborhoods come in, surrounding areas, developments come in and do something to protect us. We're giving them a wasteland. We should be allowed to.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Come on forward.
So my name is Mark Humpleby. I live at 10 White Creek Avenue in the Cross Creek subdivision that's immediately behind this development. And so a couple of different things I have to talk about. First, continue with drainage. Our subdivision is connected. All of our street drains, ditches, all drain into the lake. So all of the water in the lake, when it when it rises in the storms, goes through this ditch and then it goes out to the culvert you're speaking of. So we're concerned about the additional runoff. We're taking area that has green space plus, impermeable parking now, and there won't be as much green space as we have today. There's a retention pond planned for the site, but the retention ponds that were installed in the apartments, which are behind this site, the Avalon apartments and the standard apartments, were put in place, but no maintenance has been done on them. So they're all overgrown. And, while this one will be more visible, so it might get some attention, we're concerned about the maintenance for any drainage improvements that are made to the property and how that might impact our lake and flooding into our neighborhood. So that's one concern that we do have. The second is traffic. There's only, in this iteration of this development proposal, there's only one entrance right here. And so you've got a lot of different amounts of traffic coming out. You've got our division or our subdivision, you've got Town Creeks, townhouses. You've got the school, you've got 2 apartment complexes, all feeding into that area. That's very dangerous right here, as it is. There are no sidewalks here. So there's no place for people to walk except in the road. So any proposal should include more sidewalks here. I know there is one planned for their development, but to continue it through to Folly Road would improve safety. A pedestrian was killed last year, February, at this intersection. So as we add more traffic, I think it's really important to add more sidewalks and pedestrian
Infrastructure. If you could go to the slide that would show the proposal. Thank you. This is a pedestrian bridge right here. This was part of a community benefit agreement when the Avalon apartments were built. And so there are funding available between our neighborhood and the Avalon apartments in the city to install a bridge. So
It's great that it's on the plan, but we want to make sure that it is actually fulfilled, that it happens. My understanding currently is that the adjacent shopping center owner is reluctant to allow the bridge to happen, and that would need some kind of city mediation
to make that happen. Previous development is kind of like, well, it's, not our responsibility. We're not, it's not our bridge. But somehow it needs to come together between the developers, the city, and the property owner adjacent to that, so that it can happen. Because again, safety. You're putting a lot more people in here. There's going to be people that want to use that bridge to go shopping in the other area. It's going to take more cars off the road and benefit to not only our neighborhoods but also the proposed neighborhood.
So those really are the main concerns.
Drainage, the water management, traffic, and then pedestrian safety. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being with us, sir. Anyone else in opposition would like to speak? With the applicant, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, you go ahead.
Complex right behind here, so same thing as Lisa. We live right about here. When I purchased my property, I love the peace and quiet, like we all do in our backyards. And when you think about 51 townhomes, that's at least 100 cars coming in and out of that one spot that they're talking about. So basically, if I'm in my backyard, I'm just going to hear cars going back and forth, all the time. The other thing is, with the traffic flow, like they mentioned, there's a school that's over here that already logged us up in the morning and afternoons. The stoplight to come out, which would be here, takes almost 2 minutes. So if you're taking a left-hand turn, you're sitting forever. So every day when I'm going to work, I cut down sawgrass or the other side and cut a left to get onto that. So you're going to probably have more people doing that. I shouldn't even do it, but it's very dangerous because it gets back to that light. You miss it, you're sitting there for 10 minutes. If we have 150, 100 people going to work every morning, we're at risk. We need to change that. We also shouldn't be having an entrance coming off this very small road. We have Duke's Barbecue right over here as well. So we have traffic coming in for people waiting there. So I just have a lot of concerns about the noise for the people that are on the lakeside community or the not lakeside, it's on that side, with the cars going back and forth and people kind of encroaching on our backyards essentially when we purchase properties with not having that initially, and then also just the traffic is going to be really dangerous. And also for that school that's right there for the children. It is a fenced in area, but they could come outside as well. And if we have that many more cars coming and going, it's just dangerous. So I just have some concerns about that.
Thank you for your time, ma'am. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am, you go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Dan Koenig and I live in the Cross Creek subdivision. And my main concern is the traffic as well, because there's only really one way in and out. And with the school and everything else, it does get backed up. And we've noticed too, I'm on Hill Creek. And so coming in, they use that it's through our neighborhood, right? I mean, they use it as a cut through to avoid having to go to that traffic light. So I was here, 3 years ago, whenever they were going to put some senior living apartments there as well. And same thing, it was all about the traffic. I don't know what happened to that subdivision, but it would be nice if the developers would maybe get together with the Cross Creek homeowners. We don't really have we do have a homeowners association, and we could get together so that we could at least know what their plans are for it.
I agree with you. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else in opposition? If not, would the applicant like to address concerns? Thank you, sir.
Sure. All right. There's quite a few there, so I've got them jotted down and I'll do my best. First off, I do want to reiterate that this is by right zoning. We're not asking for a rezoning or a change in use or anything like that. We're just
abiding by the rules that are set forth by the city and putting our best plan forward based on those rules. As far as the open communication with the developer, we are glad to continue dialogues and to go meet with homeowners associations and see what we can do working with them. The drainage easement, which runs down the left side of our property, we control kind of what we control of that drainage easement. We have had discussions. It's not super attractive right now. I think there's might be some shopping carts laying in the middle of it, and some of it is eroded. It would be in the best interest of the project for us to vegetate that, which would help with erosion. And we're willing to do that. I think it would beautify it, it would stabilize it, and it would help with some of the erosion problems there. Also, with the city's redevelopment ordinance, which I feel like was a really good thing to help combat erosion and runoff and all the drainage problems we're looking at. We're actually being held to a higher standard when you compare pre versus post runoff. So we will be improving the situation by a good bit over what's out there. There's a good bit of green space on this plan. I think it totals about 1 acre out of the 4 acres. And I don't know how many of you remember the last proposal that came through on this, but it was taking out that whole area of trees in the bottom left corner, and there was a lot of pushback from that. And so when we started this project in this new process with this developer, that was one of the things that we made sure we were going to do is preserve that tree area in the bottom corner. So I think I hit drainage pretty good. We have ample green space. Maintenance, this is going to be a nice subdivision, and we fully intend to have the highest level of maintenance on here, which would include that the drainage easement and the beautifications that we'd like to do there. As far as sidewalks go, we are proposing a new sidewalk that comes basically in front of our property, wraps all the way around, comes along the front, goes through this green space, and then hits the bridge, which that bridge gives people access to the shopping center without having to go all the way around, which I think is a great thing for walkability. And I think that'll be a great amenity for the surrounding neighborhoods to have that walkway available. The bridge itself, I don't know how far I can really go into depth on that. I believe that there's been some discussions where our developer is willing to help with the construction of that, but I believe the funding comes through the city of Charleston based on some other approvals. I don't know if anybody here can speak more educated on that topic, but I would welcome it. But I think this is a great infill development. We got to keep in mind that this is currently exists as a big asphalt parking lot and an old torn down shopping building, and we're going to be really beautifying it and making a good connection for the neighbors, making it walkable to shopping and restaurants. And we hope you support this.
Thank you, sir. We hope you get their phone numbers. So anybody you want to communicate, they want to communicate with you, we'd like you to do that. So thank you. That's going to close the public aspect of this. Commission members, questions, comments, motions.
Well, I was just going to say, I end up having to make this speech fairly often just for the public, so you know what will be asked. And Mr. Seaman mentioned this, that what we're being asked is to determine not whether or not this is a good use, because they already have the zoning they need to build this. We're being asked to approve the concept plan and basically affirm that this concept plan meets the subdivision ordinance. Really has nothing to do with whether we like this use here or not, because they have the right to do it. So I just want to clarify that for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Good comment and important comment to make. Mr. Bailey?
Well, I also,
It's frustrating for me to hear all the time that there are these city-owned drainage easements that haven't been maintained in 40 years, or at least that's the claim. That seems to come up a lot. And I would just encourage you to be a squeaky wheel on that issue. I might get fired from the commission for saying that, but it is frustrating because for 9 years, was responsible for the drainage system on Kiowa Island, and which included about 60 miles of underground pipe and 124 detention ponds.
Anytime it rains, you know.
Well, I know if you don't maintain it, if you don't maintain the drainage ditches and the easements, it doesn't work the way it was engineered. And so I don't think we can punish these guys for, I think he said it well, they control what they control.
And I think Mr. Lassane said it well when he said, the issue we have is we'd love to sometimes say, don't do this, and you can't do that, but people have the rights and the zoning rights to do certain things. And if it meets the guidelines, then we really have to approve these things. No, saying that, they do have to go before the TRC and all the guidelines for the stormwater drainage and everything else. So this won't be a final stop. This is a first stop. But sometimes I think we feel like we'd like to see something else. We're not musicians. We can't buy the property, tell the city buy property and do something with it. But sometimes we do feel like potted plants, and if it meets the guidelines, we need to approve it. So Ms. Jacobs, on the floor.
To be able to help me on this. We have an ordinance that supported. That's what I was trying to remember. I just couldn't find that thing. And so I believe in general, this is where we thought this would go. The flavor of that ordinance was that maybe some of these people could actually walk to some offices and work that were in the area, so it wouldn't necessarily up the traffic.
And just to be, Chairman said, the new stormwater guidelines, some of these other
Visions were built under old stormwater guidelines. We have significantly brought that up, and I read I read that. And with this one, there was another 10 or 11 or 12 pages of recommendations just to get the concept. It doesn't even mean that the way it's laid out right now will even meet the guidelines for a preliminary building, whatever the next step is. It's going to go through a whole nother layer. They have to be responsible for their stormwater, even though everybody else isn't quite. So don't know that we're padded plants anymore. I think we're endorsing a process that is working. And the fact that it took 4 to us for concept meant that it was already critically assessed.
Is that a motion, Ms. Jacobs?
That's a motion for approval.
Second. There's a motion by Ms. Jacobs to approve, second by Mr. Lassane. Any other questions or comments? Commission members, if not all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? So that's a unanimous vote. Thank you all for coming. We hear you. We hope the developers will meet with you all often and try to answer as many questions as you have. Try to work with the city and try to resolve some of these drainage issues. As I said. Next item we have is on the zonings. Mr. Morgan, can we take any of these together?
No, I think unfortunately we need to.
Okay, number one is 1804 Eagle Street, Bodywood, West Ashley, TMS number 351-022-0035.258, SR1. It was zoned Ashley River Corridor Community Commercial Overlay District and Single Family Residential in Charleston County. Mr. Morgan.
Yeah. We had a recent annexation adjacent to this that came in as SR1. And this property is a similar size property, and it has a single family residence on it. I believe we have some images. It's in our plan, this neighborhood edge. However, the property owners are happy to keep it as a single family residence. There is the image of the property. So we are recommending approval of the SR1.
Is the applicant here? Would anyone like to be heard on this? If not, motions.
Move for approval.
Second.
Mr. Lassane, motion, Mr. Bailey, second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous vote. Anyone opposed? Unanimous vote. Next item, number 2 on the zoning is 2506 Birkenhead Drive, Shasberry, West Ashley, TMS number 309-1300051.34 acres, request SR1. It was zoned R4, Charleston County. Mr. Morgan.
And other properties we've annexed in the neighborhood have come in as SR1, and that is the most direct connection between the R4 of Charleston County and the city's SR1. This is a location that is recommended for suburban edge, so SR1 is in line with that. And the structure here is shown, and staff recommends for approval.
Thank you. Anyone like to be heard on this item? If not, Mr. Bailey?
Second.
Got a second? Yeah, second by Miss Joy, right? Okay, all right. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, it's unanimous. Thank you. Number 3 under zonings is 1940 Capri Drive, TMS number 35014000039.6 acres. That's SR1. It was R4 in Charleston County, Mr. Moore.
And this one also is coming in as SR1. It is in a location that is what we call low impact and conserved. So we sometimes recommend for like a little bit lower density. However, given the nature of the already built property and its configuration, there really isn't a way that even with SR1, it could be subdivided further. So we felt comfortable that the density would stay as is. It wouldn't be getting denser under SR1. And so that is why we recommend it for it. Here's the structure at present on the property.
Would anyone like to be heard on this? Motion. Ms. Joyce makes a motion, second by Ms. Brian Jenkins. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, unanimous. The last item on the zonings and agenda is 1776 and 1776, 1766 Ashley River Road, Dupont, West Ashley, TMS number 35111000003 and 04, 1.5 acres. Request zoning in GB. It was zoned Ashley River Corridor Community Commercial Overlay in Charleston County, Mr. Moore.
And these properties, it's currently, or it has been a Wells Fargo bank branch on both of the parcels. It's part of the county's overlay that actually goes back into this residential area behind it, as well as the properties that front on Ashley River Road. So essentially it's surrounded by commercial uses and it's surrounded by commercial designations. And the GB would be most appropriate at this point. You'll see that the other corners that are already in the city are GB. Here, this is the corner of Sam Rittenberg and Ashley River Road.
That's the busiest intersection, city of Charleston, isn't it?
That's correct. And
Done a good job with that intersection.
yeah. And so it is recommended for neighborhood edge, which GB would be compatible with. And felt comfortable with that. Here's a picture of the current structure of the property, and will come in the city and be subject to our design review board as well with their application.
Thank you. Would anyone like to be heard on this?
Available as the owner if you need.
I knew you were here for something. So I was hoping. Who are you, sir?
My name is Morris Harper. I'm from Houston, Texas. I own one of the 2 properties. But think of me, please, as coming from South Carolina. My great-grandparents married a South Carolina girl. I pay South Carolina.
You're a smart guy.
Charleston City, Texas.
You got a active piece of property there, that's for sure. A lot of traffic going through there. So anyone else like to be heard? If not, that'll close the public aspect. Motion, Ms. Brian Jenkins.
I'll make a motion.
Great,
And
thank
I
you.
too, I'm from Houston, Texas as well.
Oh, there you go.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hussein. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? That's unanimous. I think that completes our agenda. And I'd just like to say again, Ms. Molly Jones handed out her card.
Yeah.
And she's now, we expect Ms. Jones. We expect Ms. Jones, we expect to see a lot of you with annexations.
Yes.
Bringing those donut holes in so we can solve some of the problems. So thank you and welcome.
Those are all new all new annexations?
My very first annexation on the job was 1776 and 1766.
Congratulations.
Hey, no, that's a big piece of property. That's a commercial.
That's a big, yeah, that's a good one. That's a feather in your cap.
We're off to a good start.
Yeah.
We want to work those donut holes in Burnstown and Moreland, you know?
Donut holes have become my new favorite food.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
It's a tough act to follow.
No, no.
Ernest and Roddy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, it's
I feel like it was necessarily ill-intended on the part of the developer, because it sounded like they were bankrupt, and they just were trying to get rid of it.
Realtor saying.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, and they do have the, I guess they had the right to sell it.